What if I told you that Jesus didn't die on Sunday? Now, before you call me biblically illiterate and a heretic and a false teacher, what if I could give you biblical evidence? Would you accept it? Let's find out. What's going on, guys? I'm Wayne Jr. and this is the Millennial Christian channel where we're creating content for the next generation of biblical truth seekers. Now, before we get started, if you like content like this, then be sure to like the video and subscribe because I got a couple more coming down the pipeline. Now, with that being said, let's get into the topic. Now, the argument against a Friday crucifixion trades off the wording of Matthew 12:40. Now, it's well established that in the Jewish reckoning of time, 3 days could mean 3 partial days. It doesn't have to be a full day to consider a day. But in Matthew 12:40, Jesus uses specific wording to describe how long he's going to be dead. It says, "For just as Jonah was in the stomach of the sea monster for 3 days and 3 nights, so will the Son of Man be in the heart of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights." Now, he could have just said 3 days, but he specifically says 3 days and 3 nights, which would lead me to believe that this isn't just 3 partial days, but 3 full days. Now, some people use scripture to support the idea that even though he says 3 days and 3 nights, it still means 3 partial days. 2 of the scriptures they use are 1 Samuel 30:12-13 and Esther 4:16. In 1 Samuel it says, "They also gave him a slice of fig cake and 2 cakes of raisins, and he ate. Then his spirit revived, for he had not eaten bread or drunk water for 3 days and 3 nights. Then David said to him, 'To whom do you belong, and where are you from?' And he said, 'I'm a young man of Egypt, a servant of an Amalekite, and my master abandoned me when I became sick 3 days ago.'" So some people argue that since it's been 3 days and 3 nights already, then his master couldn't have abandoned him 3 days ago. But that's just not true. It certainly could have been a literal 3 days and 3 nights. In fact, if he got sick and was abandoned by his master on Sunday morning, and David's men found him on Wednesday morning, then Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday would have been 3 days and 3 nights. But then Wednesday morning still would have been 3 days later. Because if it's Wednesday, then yesterday's Tuesday, 2 days ago is Monday, and 3 days ago is Sunday. So it's quite possible that he hadn't eaten for 3 days and 3 nights, but his master had still abandoned him 3 days ago. The next verse people try to use is Esther 4:16. It says, "Go gather all the Jews who are found in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants also will fast in the same way, and then I will go into the king, which is not in accordance with the law, and if I perish, I perish." The scripture goes on to say that Esther approached the king on the 3rd day, and people use this to say, well, if she approached the king on the 3rd day, it couldn't have been 3 days and 3 nights that they fasted. But there are 2 arguments against this viewpoint. Number 1 is Esther's wording is a little different here. She says, "Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day," not for 3 days and 3 nights. So what Esther could be meaning here is that do not fast for 3 days, whether they're partial days or not. But during those 3 days, don't continue the fast during the day and at night. So even though they're 3 partial days, you're still fasting both during the day and at night for those 3 partial days. The other argument is that it actually could have been 3 full days. If the fast started at night, then let's just say, for example, it started Thursday night. Then the fast could have lasted Thursday night into Friday morning. That's a day. That's a night and a day. And then Friday night into Saturday morning. That's 2 nights and 2 days. And then Saturday night into Sunday morning, which is 3 nights and 3 days. If she approaches the king on Sunday, that's the 3rd day. And so they would have fasted for both 3 nights and 3 days, but she still would have approached the king on the 3rd day. So neither of these verses actually prove that 3 days and 3 nights are still 3 partial days. And all of the other scriptures that are provided as proof actually don't say 3 days and 3 nights. They only say 3 days. The next piece of evidence that I want to give is the special Sabbath. Now, we know that Jesus was crucified the day before the Sabbath, and this leads a lot of people to believe that he was crucified on a Friday because Saturday is the Sabbath, the last day of the week. However, John 19:31 actually specifies that it was a special Sabbath or a high Sabbath. It says, "Now then, since it was the day of preparation to prevent the bodies from remaining on the cross on the Sabbath, for that Sabbath was a high day, the Jews requested of Pilate that their legs be broken and the bodies be taken away." So in John, it specifies that that Sabbath was a high day, not just a regular Sabbath. And it was a high day because it was Passover week. In fact, the night before, Jesus and his disciples ate the Passover meal. Now, what we know about the instructions of Passover from Leviticus is that the 14th day of the month is the Passover. And then the next day is the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is also a special Sabbath. So considering that the Jewish day starts in the evening, the night before, let's say that was Wednesday night, which according to the Jewish calendar would have been Thursday, they would have eaten the Passover. Into that next morning, it's actually still the same day. And that's the day where Judas was turned over to Pilate and crucified. He was crucified on Passover. So the day after that wasn't just the regular Sabbath, it was actually a special Sabbath. And these are the points that lead me to believe that Jesus was actually crucified on a Thursday. If Jesus and his disciples ate the Passover Wednesday night, that same night, Jesus goes to the Garden of Gethsemane. Judas betrays him. The elders and the chief priests, they take him away. And then that next morning, Thursday morning, they take him to Pilate and he's crucified during that day. The last thing that I want to address is the fact that the scripture says that on the first day of the week, which we know to be Sunday, is actually considered the third day. And I want to look at Luke 24:21 because this is another scripture people use to say that it had to have been on Friday. It says, "But we were hoping that it was he who was going to redeem Israel. Indeed, besides all this, this is now the third day since these things happened." Now, this is when the disciples were walking down the road with Jesus, but they didn't know that it was Jesus yet. And so they're saying that it's now the third day since these things have happened. I think this still fits the timeline of a Thursday crucifixion, because if we remember that the Jewish day starts in the evening, then we can say if Jesus died Thursday during the day, then that's the first day. And then Thursday, that night, actually, to the Jews would have been now Friday. That's the first night. So Thursday to Thursday night is a day and a night. And then Friday to Friday night is a day and a night. And then Saturday to Saturday night is the third day and third night. But that Saturday night, according to the Jewish calendar, is now Sunday. And so that next morning, the first day of the week, when Jesus is walking with the disciples before they find out that it's him, it's still Sunday. It's still the first day of the week, meaning it's still the third day. So with all this evidence, it makes a lot more sense to me that Jesus was crucified on a Thursday, not a Friday. If we consider that it was Passover, then we can say that Jesus and his disciples ate the Passover feast Wednesday night. And that same night is when they went to the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus prayed, Judas came and betrayed him, and then the elders and chief priests took him away. That next morning, Thursday, is when they took him to Pilate, and he died that day. That's the first day. Then they rushed to get his body down from the cross and buried, because that night, Thursday night, which actually, according to the Jewish calendar, would have been Friday, would have started the special Sabbath, the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Then going into Friday and Friday night, that's now the second day and the second night. That Friday night now starts the regular Sabbath. And then we go into Saturday and Saturday night, which is the third day and the third night. That Saturday night, according to the Jewish calendar, is actually now Sunday, the first day of the week. And that's why when his disciples see him Sunday morning, they say that it is the third day. That's also how we reconcile the fact that the scripture says he will rise on the third day. That's also how we can reconcile that he rose after 3 days, because after 3 days and 3 nights, he rose. So all of the evidence, to me, actually points to a Thursday crucifixion, not a Friday one. So that's my argument. Guys, if you disagree with anything that I said, feel free to leave your argument in the comments, but remember to do so with gentleness and respect. With that being said, until next time, God bless.